welcome again to the Skillwork Forum. My name's Tim. I'm joined, as always, with my partner, Brett, here. And we get together on these podcasts and talk about industry issues and trends and challenges surrounding the skilled trades. This podcast is actually the second part, a topic that we discussed in part one. We're looking at trends for the coming year. We're winding down 2022. It's been really a tumultuous past couple of years, post-COVID, and all of the impacts of that. And we talked about that in part one. Talked about the Great Resignation, talked about evolving workforce and recession and inflationary pressures and how that's going to impact you and our business and things you need to be on the lookout for as you head into 2023. So in the second part today, we're going to delve into a couple other topics that we think are going to be big trends moving into this coming new year. Advanced technology will be our first topic, the fourth industrial revolution and something called the smart factory or smart manufacturing. We'll also spend a little bit of time talking about these hybrid work models and how you go about talent acquisition, executing a solid talent acquisition plan in the face of some of the changes that we spoke about in part one. And then something that we think is important that we spend a little time talking about and companies need to be aware of: mental health and wellness. And it's kind of related to what we've come out of and the season that we've come out of, but it's really important that you're aware of that and taking a look at that. So the first trend we want to talk about here in this second episode is investing in advanced technology. We've spent a significant amount of time on this podcast over the past year talking about the fourth industrial revolution, the need to implement automation and robotics and how that's no longer just something cool to do, but it's actually a necessity. So the idea of having a smart factory, a smart manufacturing facility, the idea of that is that this whole, think of an ecosystem, an electronic ecosystem, digitized. Everything's connected, all of your devices, your machinery, your production system, your supply, everything's connected, and you're continuously assessing data, assessing information, and sharing it out. All of this then is used to inform decisions, improve your processes, predict how things are going to be impacted, so predict issues and like maintenance failures and so forth, and then proactively get out in front and solve them even before they arise. So this idea, technological ecosystem that we're talking about, it's connecting the digital, the physical, and really the biological, meaning your people all together, entire production from supply chain all the way through to the individual operators on the floor. So that's what we feel like, man, you better be focused on putting some emphasis in this in the coming year.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, between the smart factory idea, there's systems, Wonderware is a big one and these things, but basically, as you've indicated, Tim, it's all communicating, it's all talking to each other, and it's become much more sophisticated, much more automated. I just saw something, I think it was a McKinsey report, that 62% of manufacturing plants said that they would increase their automation and robotics technology in 2023. That's
Wow.
That's a big number.
That's a big number.
So, but the other thing, the piece that I think two other pieces of this, one's really cool, the other one's just something maybe to be really aware of, is the other thing that's got to come alongside this that companies are realizing is the cybersecurity. So you've now created this manufacturing facility that is so dependent on technology, and it's all great until it doesn't work and or it gets hacked. Obviously we've seen some things in 2022 or some situations where some different things where people have hacked in on technology. So that risk level of somebody being able to get into your system and shut it down is something. So to have all of this but not have the security side of that, is really, really something I think is going to be really critical. Tim, you're a little bit more on the technology software side and on that risk factor, but to me, I just know from reading, these things have got to happen a little bit in parallel. So being in the cybersecurity business, probably is a good business to be in right now.
We were recently up in Chicago, maybe many of you were too, at the Rockwell Automation Fair, and it was amazing, some of the technology to see there. But the demonstration, the booth that was the most sophisticated, had the most people, working in the demonstration they were doing, and the most people that were coming to watch what was going on was a cybersecurity whole ecosystem that they were showing and doing simulations of a connected smart manufacturing plant and how attacks from the outside need to be monitored, tracked down. And a lot of it had to do with there are people out there that are trying to get information from your company and organization. There's that, but there's also, people that are trying to shut down your systems or even hold you ransom. A lot of big companies, we had a local company here, big hospital, nationwide hospital company, that they were held up for a huge number of ransom because somebody hacked into their system and threatened to release a lot of information. Yep. So, man, can't be overstated enough, the need to invest in cybersecurity.
Yep. No, for sure. So that's a piece of this smart factory. The other thing I think this is a technology that is going to continue to advance, and that is the utilization of AR or reality. Augmented reality technology to train and to upskill technicians in these simulated modules. If you think about it, Tim, you came out of the Navy and you weren't a naval aviator, but I'm sure there was some different levels you were around that. But, we've been doing flight simulation, you don't put, I don't know what those planes cost that they fly, but it's a lot of money. And, so before they just throw them in there, there's a lot of that, simulation. I think you're going to see that same, we're already seeing it. So they'll basically take an entire production line and then through AR technology, you can not only just predict, what the AR doesn't predict, but the smart technology will predict potential maintenance breakdowns. But then AR technology basically allows you to simulate how to fix those. Mm-hmm. So the ability to train and educate and upskill these technicians with that level of technology through the smart glass, the different ways of doing that, I think is going to be something we're going to see. I think we need to be aware of that, but I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, the other thing on that, and again, I saw some of this in real time up there at the automation fair, the ability for you, before you invest millions of capital expense in putting in a new production line or a new facility or new tool, you can put the whole thing together in a virtual reality environment, and you can actually immerse your production workers and your maintenance people into that virtual reality production floor and be able to assess what are the issues, what are the choke points, and begin to start training your people before you ever put the first piece of equipment or the building ever goes up. Yep. That's an incredible, again, it's transition from just being cool and neat to a necessity, because these are not inconsequential expenses we're talking about. It's a lot of investment. So, but the technology is really cool. And we talked, this is all interrelated, but this idea of the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0 is now what you're hearing more and more. So it started out, it was coined, probably 4 years ago or so, this term, the fourth industrial revolution. We've done podcasts on it. Then it became fourth IR. Now the term you hear all the time is Industry 4.0. So that's what we're talking about, all the same thing, this digital transformation of business, the rapid change of technology, and we've been talking about that, but it has to do with industries across the spectrum, but it also society. Your workers coming into the workforce, they are just more and more capable, more dependent on technology, more comfortable with technology. So our whole culture, the pattern that we do things is all changing due to this interconnectivity, and people are accustomed to and even I'll say demand instantaneous information, the ability to see it now, the ability to get all the information you need in near real time. And that's going to drive this Industry 4.0. Artificial intelligence, advanced robotics, even genetic editing. When you're talking about food manufacturing, a lot of genetic editing is going to be going on, and machine-to-machine communication. So let's say, Brett's one of my suppliers and I'm running a company. Before I ever have to get on the phone with him or place an order with him, my company, the machines in my company are going to understand what's needed, and they're going to talk to machines in his company, all that's going to be automated and orders going to be placed before we ever even know it's going on. And that's just going to become more and more so. It's exciting and challenging time to be in, and it's important to be on top of it. So.
You're blurring the lines between just the physical, the digital, the biological, which is the people. It's becoming this ecosystem, and at the root of it, it's a much more efficient process. Like Tim said, before, somebody's gone down to the warehouse and they're counting the boxes and they're doing this every weekend, and then they're, placing the orders and this and that and the other. That all gets, and you still run out of stuff, because sometimes they don't count that good. And so just a much more efficient system. But really, I think that whole supply side is critical, and there's obviously a lot of efficiency there. But as these facilities and these lines, Tim, we're in a facility here not too far from where we are that they built, 2 years ago. These manufacturing plants are becoming, everything's connected in those facilities. I mean, it all kind of has to run together. So the need for it all to talk to each other and connect to each other and the ability, that's all great. And it's going to improve, no doubt, the productivity and the efficiency. But probably the biggest thing, and I think it's the reason, Tim, in the last couple of years in our business, we're supplementing maintenance teams with skilled technicians, and we're seeing more and more demand and request for higher levels of automation and people that can do that type of work. So I think as all of this evolves and as we see all of this, and it is a more productive and a more efficient system. We talked last podcast in the part A of this, or part one of this, about the inflation cost and the need to be more productive and more efficient, but it's going to change the workforce composition. It is on us, and that is why in the midst of some layoffs and this and that, you're still seeing a huge demand and a need for skilled trades, and still the person who can turn a wrench, but more and more in this system, as if you're a young person or you're the parent of a young person looking to do what you're going to do for your future, the opportunity to go into this space and realize the level of sophistication. Not everybody can create video games or be whatever you call those people that make a lot of money, playing video games. But this space is pretty cool too.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. I was doing research for this. One of the trends for 23 and beyond around the fourth IR, or the Industry 4.0, was that this article I read said the most important factor to implement the Industry 4.0 were the people. And so this fear that we're going to do away with all people because of robots and automation, that's not the case at all. It's just changing, as you said, the dynamic of the type of people. I know the plant you're talking about locally, because they've had some significant outages that shut the whole thing down. And they had to have very, very skilled, capable people that knew how to get that back on point. Because everything was connected, one major thing goes down, and I mean it goes down. So people and hiring and getting the right staff in there is going to continue to be absolutely crucial, which is our space, and that's what we focus on. So we're not here to plug what we do necessarily, but we will tell you that you need to look outside of your own traditional ways of bringing people in, and that's going to get us into our next trend here that we see moving into 23, and that is hybrid work models and hybrid solutions. So talent management has got to change. This is our next trend for 2023. So we talked a lot about hybrid and flexible work. That was a part of your changing dynamic of your workforce. Workers are going to expect a lot of freedom and are going to continue to move from position to position. That's great resignation, the mobility of the workforce, company to company. That's going to continue. As a matter of fact, McKinsey study recently came out and said 58% of Americans work from home at least one day a week. 38% were not required to be in the office at all. That's all workers. Obviously, skilled workers are a little different. Likewise, a workplace intelligence article said among all full-time workers, it's estimated that around 15% are fully remote as we speak today. 30% are in a hybrid arrangement, and the remaining 55% are fully on site. So about half on site, about half not. So this is going to be a continuing trend that you got to manage as part of your talent and workforce, this hybrid flexible work. So it has a lot to do with changing work dynamic, but it also has to do with how you're hiring and vetting and managing your workforce. So another part of this is this idea that because you have people dispersed in your plant, even if you're talking about skilled workers in your manufacturing facility, a lot of your support staff are remote, and you've got this hybrid work environment where you have a lot of remote, geographically dispersed people, maybe several plants that are connected, and all of them have to be connected together in this immersive collaborative working environment where, as Brett mentioned, you're going to have more of these virtual and AR tools coming into play.
Yeah, no doubt. So we're going to continue to see other trends as well, as we talked about, just the ability to have more flexibility, more input, all of these things. Another one that's getting discussed, I don't know at this point what industries, it works in some sectors, it's going to work less in others, but that's this idea of a 4-day work week. It's a growing trend across the globe. We're seeing it more right now, probably in the UK, Sweden, Canada, New Zealand, some of those areas. There are U.S. companies that are starting to experiment with it. It's probably less likely, although I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. It's probably less likely maybe in a manufacturing space that we spend a lot. But in other, you could definitely see that trend. Same amount of productivity, but in fewer days. So, it cuts out, you got to cut out a lot of non-productive activities. And so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, here in the U.S., we've probably always been we tend to work more.
Yeah.
More other countries don't love work maybe as much as we do.
Well, it's because we're such an interconnected society anymore, globally, and people are connected. These sort of things, you start looking and seeing how other countries are doing things, companies. The inflow of new workers that you have coming into your workplace, Generation Z, maybe millennials, they're going to be attracted to this sort of thing. So begin to start thinking about how could we implement a changing or provide different opportunities for flexible work schedules, including 4-day work weeks. Maybe you work, 4 10-hour days or whatever you need to do, and you have 2 shifts that overlap each other. The point being that really paying attention to your work environment and some of the changing dynamics that are going on is going to be important, including making sure that you're paying attention to the ability for your current employees and ones you're attracting to get more skills.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think this is going to be a big deal everywhere. I mean, everything we've been talking about in these 2023 trends, or a lot of the things we've been talking about in these 2023 trends, is this movement towards smart factories and the fourth industrial revolution, or 4IR, all of this. And we've talked about it changing the composition of the workforce and these types of things. Well, along with that is going to be the need to upskill. And it's I think it goes on both sides. You've got employees who want that and will literally leave for another opportunity if they're not getting it. And then you have companies who need it. And so they are going to, through AR technology and through other platforms, they're going to be looking to take their internal employees and give them the skills, or otherwise, and as Tim indicated before, you're going to have to think about it in both ways. You're going to have to go to the external companies like us, and help supplement that, but at the same time, while you're trying to upskill your internal teams.
Yeah, so we are big proponents of this. We provide upskilling opportunities for our skill workers. If you don't know our model, we have all of our employees that are out in the field augmenting companies like yours. They're our employees. We really invest in their ability to continue to train, get training, and get better. And we have courses and classes we send our guys to. So we're not just saying this because we think you ought to do it. We invest in it as well. That company you were talking about that locally here that we support, that's very highly automated, they provide 1-week training courses pretty routinely to upskill their employees, and there's at no cost to you. As a matter of fact, their employees get their full 40 hours of work, and coming out of that, there's a guaranteed wage increase. So they're doing this because they know they've got to have this continued increased technical expertise. So it's happening around you. As a matter of fact, 83% of workers place improving their skills as their number one priority in the coming year. That's a survey that we read recently from Amazon and Workplace Intelligence. And the same study said 74% of employees are willing to leave their current job due to lack of skill building and career mobility options. That's just overwhelming. Mm-hmm. People expect it, and they will leave if you're not doing it effectively for them. So.
Well, we've talked about it, Tim. And like I said, we said this great resignation is going to continue. But I think it's evolved a little bit. Before, I don't know, why so many people left their jobs specifically, but it's evolved now to where they want certain things, and they've now gotten comfortable with the idea that I could leave and go get another job.
That's right.
And so now when you see these kinds of things, I think it is more likely because it's gotten a little bit baked into the persona, and it's not just a millennial thing. I mean, we see it with baby boomers, who they're leaving too and going to other jobs.
Yeah,
so.
And it's a way to attract people. And it's a way to keep people. So please take a look at what are you doing to upskill, not your traditional training. Hey, we're sending everybody through training so they can understand our safety here. You keep doing that. We're talking about upskilling, taking somebody from here up to here, giving them advanced capability, and that's very attractive. So a couple other things on this idea of the work environment. We'll just call it contract workers or contract work, augmenting your permanent workforce with skilled support staff. That's going to continue. That's going to be part of the future. We're not saying this just because we're in the business. I mean, we've read multiple articles about it. It's just becoming a thing. Look at what happened in the medical industry with travel nurses, travel medical staffing industry. It's something that they accept now, and it's actually helped them quite a bit to achieve what they need to do from a business perspective. So we're not talking about just temp agencies or headhunters. Our model is a great example. All of our employees, they're our W-2 employees. We just provide them to you on a temporary basis to allow you to reach your goals, augment your staff, give your workforce a little bit of relief. And if it works out to where there's a good opportunity for them to be a permanent hire for you, if it's good for you, if it's good for them, we provide that opportunity. So more of that's coming. That's all we'll say about that. But please consider that as part of your 23 planning. The last thing on this hybrid work environment, Brett, is this idea of people are focusing more on a skill set versus a job, like a job title. It's a different dynamic and it's subtle, but instead of going like, I'm a CPA, it's like, no, I have the ability to manage, spreadsheets and dollars and numbers. I'm good with numbers. I'm not pigeonholed into a particular discrete job.
Yeah. Well, I just heard, for those who follow college football, which is a lot of us. I just heard a coach yesterday. Yesterday was the early signing day, and he said, I focus less and less anymore on I need a tight end or I need a wide receiver or I need a defensive end, whatever. He said, I recruit talent because I can move the talent around. That a lot of them aren't going to come out of high school and play the same position anyhow.
Yeah, it's a good.
And
picture.
I think it's a good. I thought about that. I thought it's a good. It's true. Companies are now looking to hire talent. They don't have to be just whatever.
Yeah, and we see it a lot. Our guys are PLC technicians. Programmable logic control technicians. They have the ability to do that. They can work in a ton of different roles and different companies and different domains. So skills versus discrete jobs. That's the last part of that trend, this hybrid work models and solutions. The final thing, and Brett, I know it's something you did a little digging into, talking about we need to pay more attention. The trend is going to be there for the coming year and probably here to stay, mental health and wellness of your employees.
Yeah, unfortunately, we felt it mattered enough to add it as a topic to these trends, and so because it's here, and we talked about some of this as kind of managing through a post-COVID, pandemic world and so forth. And so definitely one of the negatives of this, and I think it was more of a negative. I don't think it just exposed it. I think it created some of this, but it's a reality. So I think we wanted to spend the last little time here, in this section and talking about just mental health and wellness, not just talking about it, because like I said, we're not mental health and wellness experts by any stretch. This is more how you as a company need to be aware of it, how we're going to manage it. We mentioned earlier in the podcast, a couple times that, 4.4 million workers quit their jobs during the Great Resignation. This kind of started a transformational shift in employers' need to meet employees' needs and employees' expectations. So said different, those people left and because there were things they wanted that they weren't getting that then they could seek. So as an employer, if my number one, almost every company, even today, will tell you, even probably before they would say, inflation cost, almost every company, at least in the manufacturing world that we live in, would say finding great talent and keeping it is their number one concern. So this process, it kind of started this employees, kind of having some different demands. We talked about that with the millennials as well. It's a little bit of a different, it's an evolving workforce that as companies, we've got to understand. 31%, this was a study, it came from Lyra, I believe it was, 31% of employees since post-pandemic stated some level of mental health issue. The feeling is that some of that was created because of isolation. All of a sudden we all went remote. We talk a lot about how people want that and how they that type of thing, but there was also there's a negative side to it, and I don't think in a lot of companies, I don't think it's gone back to full remote. I think it's going to be some hybrid of that. But so isolation created some of this. There was, people felt ostracized. So depending on where you landed in this whole, situation, for whether it be COVID specific, whether it be vaccines, whether it be, whether we work remote, whether we got to go back to the office, people became very divided. We're already divided as a country. We're not going to talk about that today. And so, but that created a lot of pressure and a lot of mental issues on that debate. So that they feel that led to it, and then just the overall burnout. We'll talk a little bit more about that. It gets back to what we do. Supplementing workforces. You cannot ignore the level of burnout that is then leading to these mental health issues. So, from the flexible workforce piece, one of the things that employees are wanting and that companies are working or need to be working to provide option for work from home days or the ability to work remote. So some balance. What I think the trend is a little bit is not 100% one way or 100% the other. They want the flexibility, because we just talked about in this scenario over here where it's all work from home. Now you get into how do you stay connected? How do you not feel isolated? How that leads to issues. But a balance of those types of things, I think, is probably going to be true. We do that here, Tim, or we try hard to do that, where we provide work from home opportunities, whether it be because of weather or whatever, or hey, we encourage our people to, take a day and work from home. And so obviously they've got to be self-disciplined, they got to be able to be productive and those kind of things. And that, leads back into some of the stuff, Tim, you talked about on the surveillance, which is a bad word. It sounds like a bad word, but the monitoring side of that. Type of thing. And so the other piece in this mental health from a company perspective, again, not trying to have a conversation about mental health per se, but just the recognition of that. But I think without any doubt, in that we talked about benefits, Tim, a little bit ago, and one of those is going to be, it's becoming something that employees are looking, is that provided as part of my health health, dental, vision, one of the things that companies or that employees are looking for is my company providing any kind of benefit when it comes to mental health and support in that. I think to the employees, it says they recognize, they're empathetic, they care, and at the same time, from a company perspective, you want your employees to be, physically and mentally healthy.
Yeah, well, the biggest deal with people that are struggling with that is feeling like that you're isolated, nobody else is struggling with it, and the fact that the generation we came up in was taboo or was not very well understood. And the idea about, what do you mean you're depressed? It's if you don't understand that and you don't have anybody close to you, or you don't get your head around that, it's hard to empathize with that, but recognizing that a lot of these things are now becoming not only more prevalent because of all the pressures and things we talk about, but the fact that people feel a little bit more open or free to talk about them. And you as an employer, you gotta pay attention to this, because it's a reality, and our kids are growing up and they're facing stressors and pressures that we, frankly, didn't have to face. And so there's a lot more of this going on. So it's important that employers really need to look at some of these things that you're talking about. It's going to be a trend that I think in some ways it's sad for our culture. And another way, it's also the idea that we're becoming more aware of it and more empathetic about some of the needs.
Yep. No, it is. No doubt. And to that end, like you said, even extending that, you mentioned, Tim, to employees, families, their children and their family, pretty involved in public school system, and, have met with a lot of teachers. The number one, we talk about this over here in the work world, which is where we live, but the same thing is happening in the public school system, is
Sure.
that the number one issue with almost every teacher that you talk to is behavioral issues and mental health issues, which is both for the students, but then the teachers who are dealing with all these new behavioral issues. Like I said, these are not great things from a societal perspective. We could go into a whole nother podcast of that, but the reality is as an employer, we just have to be aware. So I think there has to be awareness and empathy. I think you've got to look into, along with your benefits, at least needs to be something you're looking into and seeing what could you offer. I think you're going to have employees that it's definitely going to matter. And then from a standpoint of how to help, kind of manage through, some of those issues, clearly providing flexibility with the workspace and more control to the employees, take some of that stress away, and then just reducing the burnout, the making sure that you're properly staffed, looking at your workload, checking in on your employees, type of thing. I mean, I know it sounds, I don't know, maybe self-serving from a standpoint of what we do and that we provide supplemental help. But as I studied this mental health thing, I thought, we look at it, Tim, and we've always talked about how we can positively impact those clients and companies that we work with by helping them be properly staffed. I think there is a tie-in to this in the burnout side of it as well.
Yeah, and I think you got to recognize, as you said, Brett, that we're not trained mental health experts. We don't understand it, but you can understand, and you can be trained up on understanding what are the things to look for, what are some of the symptoms, what are some of the triggers that are going on, and provide a means and a mechanism for your employees to get the help they need. This is not going away. This is going to, if nothing else, it's going to increase. And I think your employees are going to be coming to expect that this sort of support is available for them, and they will seek companies that emphasize things like diversity. And we talked about, understanding climate, and we're talking about supporting mental health. Now you can get into a whole, that's a political thing, that's a movement that we don't want to be supportive of, and I definitely can land in that place as well, and understand there's a healthy place to be, and where you have the ability to not allow those sort of things it's kind of like the tail wagging the dog. But we also recognize the reality of cultural shifts and things that are going on, that's important that you enter into these things with empathy and understanding. So that's really the last of the things we wanted to talk about in terms of our trends. So just to summarize, hopefully you'll be able to pick some things out of this, but we talked about the Great Resignation, post-COVID impacts, how that is impacting an evolving workforce, different values, motivations of the employees, some of the hot buttons. Went into depth a little bit talking about the recessions and inflationary impacts that we're going to continue to see going into 23. Another one of the big trends, advanced technology, this fourth industrial revolution, our Industry 4.0, the smart factory. We talked about that at length. We see that being a significant factor going forward. Hybrid work models, talent management solutions, including contract work and support from companies like ours. And finally, we believe mental health and wellness is going to continue to be a big trend for you going forward. So that is kind of our look forward in 23. I don't think any of these things are like mind-blowing or revolutionary, but they are significant and things that you need some time and attention to, and how you're going to mitigate some of these risks and some of the threats that could impact your workers and your workforce going into the coming year. So that's kind of it. Brett, do you have any final thoughts as we finish up here?
No, I mean, it's coming. 2023 is coming, and so like soon. So I'm a very goal-oriented, very optimistic person. So I'm excited for 23, but at the same time, I think there's a reality of challenges, but also there's the opportunity of those challenges. I think when you're dealing with a lot of what we've dealt with the last couple of years and inflationary, out of these things, there's always going to be companies and individuals who are going to benefit because they're willing to recognize it and they go all in on some of these things, and there'll be other people that'll just kind of get caught in it and just type thing. So we want to be we're supporters of recognize it, have a plan, stay ahead of the trends, and you'll come out quite well, I think, in 23 and beyond.
All right, so thanks very much for paying attention to these two parts of our look into 2023. We hope they were valuable to you. And again, as Brett mentioned, we're looking at 23 with a lot of optimism, and we hope that you are as well, that you thrive in the coming year. And as a matter of fact, happy and a prosperous 2023 to you. We're grateful that you take the time to listen to part or all of this. And we just want to remind you that, as we often remind ourselves and our employees here, our number one core value is we honor God in everything we do. And by that, we mean we land on that. And that's the filter that we run our business through and our lives through, that filter. And for us, even facing an uncertain and tumultuous future, we don't know what the future holds, but we know who holds our future. That's a cliche, but it's still true. So we pray that that's the same for you and yours in 2023. Just want to shout out and a quick plug here for our friends at Texas Boys Outdoors. It's a show we sponsor proudly. Take a look at them. They're on the Pursuit channel. They do great stuff for first responders, special needs people, veterans. Get them out in the great outdoors. So Roy and his guys, Texas Boys Outdoors, love those guys. Take a look at that. Also, another podcast that we support here is called The Proud Skill Worker. We take a look at the stories from guys that are out in the field that turn wrenches and that troubleshoot, build, install things, and listen to that if you want to get a perspective from that side of our organization. Until next time, God bless. Take care.